on this. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our Well-Connected Productive AF final session for the month of September. It's been so fun to, talk to everybody about productivity and help with some of your systems and things like that. I'm really excited for today. We're going to just have a really natural, we have nothing prepared. Sara and I just know each other so well. We're just gonna have a nice little chat, authentic chat about habits and probably some self-care. So first off, I wanted to introduce Sara Brand. She's a dear friend of mine, and just grateful for her taking the time to come and talk with you guys, and just gonna have her introduce herself to you all.
Hey everyone. Yes, I'm Sara. Tiff and I know each other from way back in direct sales days. And I started my coaching journey as a habit coach, and how I came into that field was like probably everybody has experienced. I got tired of my own BS, basically. I wondered, I had these really frustrating moments of, I remember it being like New Year's resolutions and being like, I think I made the same resolution for the last 4 years in a row. And getting so frustrated and so annoyed with myself in the stop, start, pull, push of goal setting. And so finally one day I kind of thought, why is this so hard? Like, what do I not get? I remember thinking, I'm a pretty smart girl. I'm driven, like I know things, but this just really seems to be blocking, where I want to be, where I want to go. And so I started to get educated. I actually started with my local library, and I got a couple books on habits. And what I discovered about habits just through reading a couple books and starting with some of those resources like podcasts and following certain people on social media and reading books was the number one thing was I didn't know a dang thing about how our brains worked. And the true fact is your brain is actually meant to work against you when you're doing new things. And throughout this journey of getting educated, I started, of course, then to experiment on myself and see some great movement, and then went further into a certification program from Tiny Habits Academy in California, and which I'm sure I'll talk about a little of that too in here. And that's transformed then my coaching, how I help myself, how I work through my own experiences, and then bring that applied experience and that wisdom to the table for helping clients out.
Awesome. Well, and just so everybody's aware, what do you do now?
So what I do now is, my coaching has evolved into like a depth that's very different. So I realized, as we'll talk about in habits, is a big part of setting habits is your motivation behind what you want to do and what you want to accomplish in life. And for me, that included a deeper meaning, a spiritual side of realizing what was calling out to me to become. What my place was in this world and whatnot. And so as I applied more of so if our brain is meant to stop us, what's overriding and what's really that calling? And so I started to look a little bit more at mind, body, spirit. And as I started to apply that in my life, I started to realize that my marriage was no longer a healthy situation for me to be in anymore. And as I did the inner work, my partner, my ex-husband, did not come with me in doing that same type of growth and that inner work. And so now through the transition into being a divorced mom of 3, I now am talking about and helping women as I sit alongside them as they make the decision whether to stay or go in their marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, there can be a lot of shame and just a lot of emotions that can go in if you feel like you failed as a wife or as, and so what you're doing is really incredible. And I'm excited that I was able to be a part of the journey and the transition and the transformation through actually a lot of that. Like I've known you for more than 4 years. And so, yeah. Well, great. Well, so if anybody has questions, I'll share Sarah's info somewhere so that people can reach out to you. So I'd love to just kind of have a brief conversation or pose the question from a productivity standpoint. How do habits play into that?
They're kind of everything, but they're not as rigid and as, I think when we hear the word habits, I really truly think most of us kind of go, it's like kind of a little like, it's a rigid word. And we also tend to have somewhat of a negative, like, oh, I have bad habits. Yeah, I have bad habits. I eat too much sugar. I drink too much wine, or I don't exercise as much. But
check. I eat too many potato chips. I eat too many potato chips.
And this is a wellness talk, right? Yeah. But it's just true. So the kind of feeling about shifting that perspective a little bit, that our brain is designed to keep us safe and comfortable. So it's the first thing that I think is the best thing to know, is it's just your brain's job is to try to keep you the same. And in the underbelly of change is that's exactly what we're trying to do, is break through those things. But if you don't understand how your brain is meant to do that for you, it can be extremely frustrating. You can maybe think the same thoughts that I think, which is there something wrong with me? Shame, guilt, feeling inadequate, less than. And so sometimes when we want to reshape our thinking into habits and what they mean to us in our lives, I think the first thing is to think about is it's meant to keep us alive, but we have to look at it from a different angle in order to become the person, like for us on this channel, might be the entrepreneur who we're trying to be. So if you want to scale and grow your business, then you have to become the person who can have a better business. And you do that through consistently showing up as a new version of yourself. And so habits, when you look at the opportunity that you have versus the cringiness of it, in order to understand it better, you can hack it as a way to build yourself to a new level.
Yeah. So what's a good, if we are feeling that, like, I personally am someone that I love change. Like there's just something in me that likes to change. And so a lot of times, a new habit, like I look at it as a positive thing, but I know that that's not the norm. And so if we are feeling like that feeling of like, I know I need to change something and I know I need to build a better habit, what's the best way for us to tell our brains, in essence, that this is a good thing, right? That this is safer for us. We're not trying to like rock the boat and make ourselves unsafe, but we're, like, what are some ways that we can kind of trick our brain into saying this is a good thing?
Well, I have like a million different answers. So the first thing that I would say is understanding that doing a lot of things with the intention because you should, or you have a guilt-driven intention, is usually never going to move the needle, because that signals that you don't actually have true motivation to do it. Your motivation is built on unhealthy, kind of ugly feelings underneath of maybe a societal pressure or a messaging that you got from your family growing up or something. So the first thing in order to make any behavior happen is you need three things. You need motivation, you need the ability, and you need a trigger. And I think that's, so it's behavior equals MAT, motivation, ability, and trigger. So when you look at first one, motivation, if you're only motivated by guilt and shame, then it's not coming from a place of love. It's coming with this energy of heaviness and ickiness and a drive that isn't rooted maybe in a true alignment of who you are or where you really want your business to go. Because anything built in guilt and shame isn't you expressing yourself through your business, through your entrepreneurship. And so I think first of all is to get really clear with your true motivation behind something. And if it's rooted in something that you are proud of from a love-based feeling.
So how, I mean, I still want to go to the A and the T, but just
Yep.
on motivation, how do we know? I feel like just as a woman, sometimes sorry for the guys in the group, but I feel like guys are better at knowing like what they want than women. Sometimes we feel more societal pressure in certain things, but how do we know if the motivation is that not from the right place? You know what I mean? Like, are there practices that we can put in place to kind of test to see, is this truly a me motivation, or is this like, Instagram's telling me that I should create a course? Like, this is like something I feel very guilty about. Like, I should be creating courses because that's what Instagram tells me to do. But is that really where I want my business to go? Is that really something that's, good for me and my business and where I'm at right this moment? Like, what are some ways that we can kind of figure those things out? Like, if the motivation is true for us?
I have a pretty simple answer. And I think when I heard this like years ago, I wasn't ready to kind of receive it, but I am now. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, is if you just sit with it for a minute and you literally feel how it feels in your body, are you naturally excited to go and do that thing? Or are you like, ugh, oh, okay. Oh gosh, now I gotta find an expert here, and I gotta call this person, and I have to do this. That right there is telling you where your true intentions and motivations lie. Now, it doesn't mean that building a course, Tiff, isn't a great thing for your business. But as the head of your business right now, if you aren't genuinely excited to move into that, then I would say it's just not the right time.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I don't think that you can think your way into a lot of solutions. I think you need to shut it down and connect with what does it truly feel like for you, and unapologetically letting it be your call, where you want to put your energy into right now.
Well, and I think that's the hardest part, is like,
Yeah.
we listen to what everybody else, and we should on ourselves. Like, we should be doing this, and we should be doing this, and I should be doing this. But in reality, I'm reading Essentialism right now. And I feel like that's like a great reminder of like, okay, if it doesn't do this and it doesn't do this, it should not be on my plate. We were talking before I click live that I'm getting a couple things off my plate in this season, and that feels amazing to say no to some things that I've said yes to for a very long time. So
and those things change. Like, you might have been totally great with it last year, and this year you're like, nope, you know, and that's okay. That's okay. Because, you're a super productive person, Tiff. It's one of the things I always admire about you. But how does it feel for you? Like, if somebody came and said, you should do this next, or you should do this next, like, do you listen to everything that everybody says?
Yeah, no. Sometimes that's the East Coaster in me, though, I think, I'm like, I don't have to do that. But it is hard. It is hard, especially as an entrepreneur, when you're a solopreneur, when you're by yourself. It's like, you don't have like people in your office to go and bounce ideas off of. So it's hard to listen to that intuition of, okay, this doesn't feel right now. And not that it's a never. And I think to play into that, one of the things we talked about this month is having some sort of system to log your big ideas, so that if they are a not now, you still have them parked somewhere. So your brain, you're protecting the idea somewhere, so you don't lose it, but you're not like trying to hold on to it, because by holding on to everything in our heads, it really stifles our creativity. So to journal, to brain dump, to get all those big ideas out there somewhere, whether it's Trello or ClickUp or a notepad or a journal or whatever. I mean, I like online platforms because then you can kind of organize and put due dates and things. But whatever it is for you, I know. I mean, I still like value journaling, like the handwritten. I mean, everybody who knows me knows I always have my notepad of like all my tasks, and I don't cross things out. I redact them. So with like a black highlighter. But having some place that houses all of that, so that you do feel like you can release it and know it's not going anywhere. You still can go back and look at those and pull them when you're ready to, or when you feel excited about them.
Yeah.
So what's the A then?
Ability. So ability is really interesting to me because I think we can protect ability. We can kind of make excuses around ability sometimes. But what I think the most important thing to know about ability, like, okay, so if you want to go and exercise, but you know, your body is hurting or you're in pain or you have an injury, like you might not have the ability right now. Okay. So, or you might want to go for a run, but your legs hurt. So you have to go for a swim instead. And this is one of the things about ability, and we can talk specifically about ability, but I like to talk about ability in relationship to motivation because they're actually a trade-off to make behavior happen. So sometimes your motivation can be so high, even if your ability is low, and you can still make behavior happen, and vice versa. So an example I would give is, like, let's say you get all the kids on the school bus in the morning and you have this 1 hour. Okay. You've got 1 hour. And then, you know, after this hour, it's meeting, and then kids activities. Right. So
I spend my whole week.
That's actually your life, actually. Yeah. But if you have a goal of becoming stronger, fitness, or you're training for something, or you're just trying to just keep up with self-care in some way, and you know this is your 1 hour, if you have an intense amount of motivation, like this is your goal, and it meets with the ability to do it, because you have this 1 hour, and the trigger is a time or an event, which is getting the kids on the bus. So the kids get on the bus, your motivation is high, your ability is high enough, then boom, you make the behavior happen. Okay. Now let's say you get the kids on the bus, same scenario, same trigger, and you are really excited to work out. And your ability to do it is low. Maybe let's say you're super tired or you're not feeling that well. And so, I don't know, maybe you'll take like a couple laps around the block. Maybe you won't do your full workout, but you'll do something for yourself. But because your motivation is so high, but maybe you're not feeling the best, you can still make it happen. The other thing is, maybe your ability is high, even though this happens probably more often than not. Like, your ability is high, you tell yourself, if I want to make this happen, this is the 1 hour, but my motivation is low because, man, I would maybe rather go take a nap and lay down rather than get a workout in, you know? So maybe your motivation to work out is low, but knowing that this is the hour that you have, your ability is high, so you might still make it happen. So just knowing that, balancing those, or when they're both high, is just the absolute win-win for any behavior to happen. But knowing if one is high and one is low, it can still happen.
So we'll talk about T in a second, but with the motivation and the ability, are there things that we can, or ways that we can turn them into habits, like, so that your brain automatically, like, maybe your motivation can be a little low, but it's like repetitive. So you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to explain this, but there's some repetitiveness to it. So it's like brushing your teeth. Like, you don't think, I really don't have the motivation to brush my teeth. You just brush them because you've done it for so many years. Like, it's just second nature. Right. It's not like you have to make a conscious decision. Is my motivation enough for me to brush my teeth? Like, it just kind of happens. I mean, maybe some people it is, but maybe my 5-year-olds, the motivation is not there yet. But, you know, for the rest of us, how do we kind of turn those into habits so that maybe if something's off kilter, it's still more likely to happen because there's some sort of routine around it.
I agree. And I want to make sure I wasn't clear enough in the beginning. So there's habit formation, which we'll talk about. And this is just simply behaviors and how we make behaviors happen. So once we nail down what behaviors need to happen, we can then put them into kind of a formula for habit creation. And so motivation is obviously driven by your your wants, your desires, your goals, intrinsically, even knowing yourself spiritually, like maybe you have a life mission, that you are meant to do. So it's your inner motivation. Your ability is really interesting too, because you can change your environment and you can do things. You really just have to rearrange your life a lot of times too, to have more and better ability and more and better motivation, which you naturally start to do when you do have goals in mind, when things that you have that you want to achieve. You say no to things to make room to say yes to others. We just talked about this before we hit record, Tiff, right? Like if you're busy right now and you're too busy, but you're on the right path, it actually is kind of easy to let low-hanging fruit go, or things that maybe just aren't aligned with what you want to do anymore. So you are more intrinsically focused on moving to a different direction. So in order to make these habits happen, you need to have a motivation, ability, which we just talked about. Do you feel like I talked about that clearly enough? Okay. And then trigger. So the trigger can be anything, like a time of day. It can be a person, an environment, a feeling. And this is kind of a wide range of things, but it begs to have some of your attention on it, because triggers, if you already have patterns that are set and habits that are set, triggers it's the starting point of an automation, basically. So when you're changing a habit, trying to change a habit, that means you already have a trigger in place. So what you want to do is be mindful about what happens, how that starts by the trigger. The trigger is always the first point. So the example is, maybe let's just talk about phones, because I think everybody can relate to that. So the second you hear your phone go off, that's the trigger. And the trigger is calling your attention to check your phone. That's, clearly, right? And so the interesting thing about the phone is it isn't maybe as much about how long it takes you to physically check it, but what it does do is it takes usually under a second, when the habit is already set, for your attention to be pulled towards your phone and away from something that you're doing. So the trigger is your phone goes off. The action is moving your attention towards your phone. And what you're trying to do is your body is trying to get you to check your phone, because the trigger is saying that there's some message or something here in discovery that you have, you want to know, like, what's on the other side of this message? Who's messaging me? What's this email about? It makes you feel wanted, needed, included, important, connected. And so when you check your phone, you kind of solve the mystery, and that creates a dopamine rush in your body. And that dopamine rush reminds yourself that the next time that trigger happens, to check your phone, because your body likes the dopamine that it gives it. Right? So it becomes a huge issue, let's say, when you're trying to focus your attention on something and you still have your phone on, right? And we all know that feeling. So
that's why I tell people to turn off their notifications.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's hard. So what you want to do, and still sticking with the example of the phone, is the first thing to do is to obviously remove the trigger in some way, shape, or form, or minimize it. So that can be, like you said, turn it off, turn it on silent. That's one of the first things, to at least take it down a notch. But I think we all know that there's still this intrinsic pull towards going to check your phone all the time, even without the notifications on, because we've become so reliant on it for so many different things. So one of the tricks that I like to do with phone, if phone is the problem, or if you have a teenager or a kid, is I take a piece of paper and I put it down on across the room. Like I'd put it on the kitchen counter. I put my phone on it, just on top the blank piece of paper, and put a pencil there. And anytime you go to check your phone, instead of checking it, just write like a tally mark. Don't check it, but write a tally mark, and notice how just notice how you feel or how difficult it might feel for you not to check your phone, but be really honest about how many tallies you're giving yourself.
Yeah.
Just simply because it's an awareness technique to look at how much attention you're giving your phone or just a thing, that's over across the room.
Yeah. And I think too, to go into that from a focus standpoint, that I've realized in the last couple of weeks is be aware what you're feeding yourself from your phone or your devices too. Like, I feel like that was something that hit me. There was one thing that I was listening to that I would always listen to in the morning because it was a morning radio show. Mm-hmm. And some things were said a couple times that really derailed me for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And just that awareness, why am I choosing to put this in when I know it's going to irritate me? And then I'm snippy at the kids and I'm angry. Plus I'm not paying attention to them in the morning because I'm listening to this. So it was like, just that awareness of like, nope, I'm just going to not listen. They have a podcast. If I want to go back and listen to it later when I'm by myself, and it's not going to affect me as much as first thing in the morning. So I think that's too, is like, not just how many times, but what are you letting in through the devices? Is it things that really help you move the needle for your personal and your business life? Are they things that are growing you as a person, that are improving those areas? Or are they, we all have our devices of like, just the let go and, watch Hulu or Netflix Absolutely. Or whatever, like sure. That's okay. But at the same time, if that gets out of balance, and there's so much of that it's clouding or taking away from the things that are important to us, I think that's where. But I also think last December I talked about vision and having really solid vision for every area of your life, including your family and your parenting and your marriages. Yeah. For the longest time, my husband and I did not have a TV in our bedroom because we felt like that was a deterrent from us having conversation and intimacy and things like that. The new house we moved into 2 years ago has a TV in it. But again, we're very strict on, it's like Thursday night football games and, maybe one movie on a Saturday night. And then otherwise it's off, or the kids will come in and watch a show on a random school night if it's raining or snowing or something. But it's like, how can we be intentional about not just how many times we're checking, but also what are we checking? What are the things we're allowing into us to, derail us? And because that's a bad habit.
Agreed.
Also why my teenager does not have a phone. So
I know. Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother subject that I'm very versed on.
Yes. I know we've had the conversations about.
Yeah. It's tough. It is really tough. And you're right. I think there's layers into the awareness. I think if you're in the moment and you're really, the biggest lesson for me is, even if you have thoughts towards something, you're exchanging your present moment for a thought towards something else. Mm-hmm. You can only have one thought at a time. Like, it's impossible to have two thoughts at the same time. So you can have one thought here and then one thought over here and one thought over here and one thought over here. You can kind of fight with yourself, and you all know that feeling of left, right, yes, no, yes, no. It's kind of exhausting because you're just kind of always going back and forth, but still you can only have one thought at a time. So if you're trying to work and your phone is constantly going off and pushing your attention, that's so many times, so many moments that you're just not focused. And it also takes you time to get back into your groove, Yeah,
I think I've shared this statistic in this group before, but I think it's like 7 to 12 minutes it takes for the average person to regain focus after they've been interrupted.
Yeah.
Or change gears. Like, it could be you intentionally like, okay, I'm going to write a blog. Now I'm going to go check my email.
Yep.
It could be intentional that you're done with something, but just to know that you need that time that's why I think too, like, for those of us, this last week has been exhausting to me. And I told my husband, I understand what it's like for him, because he's on meetings like from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. And this week, it's normally not my schedule, but I've been on meetings back to back to back without any time. Like, I get off this Zoom and I get on another Zoom. And by the end of the day, my body is tired. Like I'm emotionally drained. And it's almost like my brain had to keep up. I didn't have the time to kind of adjust or transition because it was back to back to back like that. And it was different conversations and different topics and different means or all those things. So it almost feels like that like emotional drain at the end of the day could be, I mean, maybe it's not, I'm like speculating here just because that's been my week. Like I am so tired. We're normally a full day of work doing work isn't as exhausting as like a full day of meetings. So I don't know if it's just the talking and the emotional connecting with people, or if it's that lack of transition. Because even just you know me, Sarah, I could talk all day to people.
Yeah. Yep.
But when
I think meetings are interesting too, Tiff, right? Because it's a constant give and take and giving and receiving and giving and receiving. And sometimes when you sit in meetings, it's not even your stuff. I mean, depending on what the meetings are, it's kind of like you just need to be present, and you might not even play a big role in that dynamic or whatever. So you're kind of taking on people's ideas and energy and stuff. Yeah. And it pulls you out of you creating your own energy and your own movement forward. So a lot of times it feels like you have to have such good boundaries and some protective modes, but you don't get to always give back when you're not creating and doing your own stuff too. And
that goes into one of the things I talked about when we talked about schedule management, is that you want to guard time in your schedule, that you are free, that you're free to think, free to create, free to just get your things done, or just be open to like, okay, I just need to sit on this idea for a little while. Most of the entrepreneurs I work with, they've never had their time to just sit and think. It's go, this after this. And a lot of times we say yes to things we don't necessarily need to be present at, or it's like death by meeting. Like I realized with my team early on, we were doing a weekly meeting. I'm like, guys, this is unnecessary. Like I run a small shop. Like we don't need to talk every week. Let's just do once a month, a big powwow. It'll be a little bit longer, and then we'll just chat the rest of the time, the rest of the month. And if something pops up, everybody's open to like talking it out like this. But I think if we can look at our organizations and say, what could we minimize? Could we minimize the meetings so that not just the owner, but all the team members have time to be creative and to think, and to not be so rushed and so overworked that they can't look at the businesses from like a fresh perspective and see if there's things that could be improved on, or just especially in the service, like in the health and wellness, like you need to have enough energy to then provide good service to your clients, like regardless of what that service is. And so if you're going back to back to back to back with clients, that's very draining for not only you, but it can rub off on your clients too. So I think being aware of that could.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Yep. I agree completely.
Well, I'd love to kind of circle back onto the creating good habits, like what are some foundational principles or practices that we can put into play now that we know the different parts that play into it. Yeah. How do we then create those habits?
So the habits, if you're starting something from scratch, you need to think about what is your trigger, what's the action that you're going to do. But the most important thing that we don't realize is you have to be responsible for giving yourself your own dopamine rush behind the action. And this is actually super interesting, and it's not something that we do automatically, or we give our power away to an outside circumstance. So when I started learning about habits in the beginning, Tiff, you and I were in direct sales. And so anytime, and I mean, I'm sure most of the people on this channel are in sales. If you're entrepreneurs, like you get it. Like, and what's really interesting is when you, let's say you're reaching out to 100 people, and what you want to be celebrating is the reach out in and of itself, the intentional connection that you are responsible for. So let's say you have a power hour. Okay. So you set it up in your business. Let's say this is a new habit that you want to create. Okay. Your alarm goes off, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and this is your trigger for this power hour that you're going to do. And you're going to spend that whole hour either reaching out, creating content, doing something that is pushing and giving your love and energy out into the world. You have set up your environment so your ability is high and your motivation is high. You have no distractions. You have everything that you need. You've gone to the bathroom, you have a full bottle of water, like everything else just shut down. You know, like you set up your environment, and this is the hour, right, that you're going to do this. And let's say you write an email, pick up the phone, whatever the case is. So you pick up the phone, you write the note, the email, you make the call, whatever it is that you're communicating. And then after that, you want to celebrate and give yourself your own dopamine rush for just creating that opportunity, for making that call. So for me, what works really well, because I'm a pen paper kind of person, I love either doing crossing off lists or check marks or tallies. That's always what feels good to me. Like when I do something, when I have a list of things, but I accomplish something else, I will add it to the end of the list, and just so I can cross it off. And a lot of people
We're the same like that. We're the same like
that. Yes. If you do that, that's a really good hint that just a cross off actually makes you feel good and accomplished, which in and of itself,
I like crossing things off in different color. Like I like to color code my crossing off too.
So anything like getting to know yourself in what you like and what the
Okay, one more question. When you're done with the piece of paper, do you fold it and tear it in half? Because that's
that'd be good.
Like this is like a whole list of things that was done.
That's
so
awesome.
Fold it, tear it.
Fold it, tear it. I usually go further. Like I do a lot of like burning, you know, like releasing and burning things too. Throw that in the fire. Yeah. So knowing that what you want to do is celebrate the behavior, not the outcome. And this is where people in sales and entrepreneurship get super stuck, because the magic is in the moment of connection. It's not the magic of your business can't be tied to the result if someone responds at all, you know, or responds with whatever it is, a click or a sale or a response back. It can't be about somebody else's response to you. The actual habit has to be, and the dopamine rush has to be connected to what you are in control of. That's how you build the habit. Because when you do that, you're totally giving your power away to outside circumstances and validation from people outside who do not know you. And also, when it comes to like social media and email and all these things, just because they don't respond does not mean that they did not see your message. And that is really super important. So it goes for all of the things, whether it's you creating content or going live or doing videos or posts or email blasts, or just the good grassroots, like going to events, following up with people, emailing, calling them. I mean, it doesn't matter. A connection is a connection. And celebrating when you're connecting is so much more fruitful in how we build habits than you will absolutely sabotage yourself when you give the power away to the response of those types of things. You have no idea what other people are going through and when they're going to respond, but what you can rely on is that you've triggered them so many times consistently, and every time that you trigger them, you're reminding them who you are and what you do. And so if you've triggered them 20 times by sending multiple emails or, you know, following up through your business, not being like a stalker, triggering them 20 times, but, you know, like following through with your actual business plan, they could just be out to lunch on a random day, you know, talking with a friend and be like, you know what? You need this person in your life because you have this problem and this person's job is solving this problem. And here's the connection. And that's how the universe works. That's how the world works. And so, but when you give your power away to people like, oh, they're not responding or it didn't work, then it tanks your motivation, but it would, because you relied on somebody else's, you know, judgment of you basically, or the response of you to validate or not validate what you're doing.
Yeah. And a couple of things with that. It's funny. I never put this together, but I have a couple clients. One, when we first started working together, she said, we don't really do this anymore, but we would play Bodak Yellow, like after every proposal.
Yeah.
Like she would play it and voice chat me. I mean, so inappropriate song, but regardless, like it was just like we're celebrating, we sent a proposal. Like it was like a celebratory thing. And like,
and
I even did it with it was just the proposal. Yeah. And I did that with my team last week. I sent a proposal and I Voxered my team and I was like, guys, I just sent out a proposal. Like, yay, I'm excited.
Absolutely.
So it's so funny. I just naturally did that. I didn't even think like, oh, like there's power in celebrating those moments.
So much.
So that's funny to think about.
And because we're so sales driven, right? We're so money driven and sales driven, but we've made that an equal thing to success. And it's not about just your natural gifts and energy and love that you're putting out into the world. You have to give people the opportunity to respond.
Yeah.
And your power is in your response, just like theirs is. You know?
Yeah. And I think the other thing that we forget about is momentum. Like we learned this in sales, and conversations I've had with my husband is that there's power in momentum. So just the act of sending it is like a snowball on the top of a hill. And every time you're building, eventually I actually had this issue with the client too. We had a huge December, like biggest month she's ever had in her business, then nothing. But we were still building relationships, still sending proposals. But like from a close rate, we had nothing until like May or June. Yeah. But then again, 3 perfect clients on her roster in 1 month. So it was like, I think as entrepreneurs, we get stuck in instant gratification in some ways or whatever it is, but we forget that there's power just in the consistent momentum that we can build, or the momentum we can build by being consistent and remaining consistent in our actions. And knowing, I talk about this a lot, but knowing what our KPIs are, our key performance indicators, the things that really move the needle in our business, the things if it is sales calls, if it is networking events, if it is social media, whatever it is that where your clients are living and you are putting the energy into building those relationships in whatever that looks like for each individual business. Sometimes it's, a referral system because you're so good, your clients are telling other people, and especially in the health and wellness industry, having a really robust referral system, if that's where your energy should be going. But yeah, I think momentum is underrated.
Yeah.
I think we forget about.
Oh yeah. Anybody watching this has probably watched a sports game. Yeah. Where a team is your team is all of a sudden, you kind of thought, man, there's no way we're going to win this. And all of a sudden there's whatever it is, a touchdown or a couple baskets or goals or whatever it is. And you can feel it when your team is starting to move. And you also have been on the other side where you're on the other team that's sitting there going, oh crap. Oh crap. It's pretty powerful.
I've been a Patriots fan for most of my life, and I can be hated for that. I'm okay. they were notorious for playing the momentum game.
Absolutely.
Getting their feet underneath them.
There was something that you said too, and this is this is in the layer of all, when I talk about triggering your clients, is super interesting because I'm rewatching Schitt's Creek for the 3rd time all the way through. And there's an episode in there where David is going to take his driver's license and his sister Alexis goes with him. And there's this moment where he's all in his head because to him, this is a really big deal and it's really important. I think I might be a little off on the storyline here, but the whole episode is she's like, you think that people notice this stuff but nobody cares, David. Nobody cares. People they're in their world, in their lives. They have their problems. They have all of their stuff going on. They have their goals, their thoughts, their dreams, their family, their everything. And so we think so much that every little thing that we're doing is so stinking important. Now it is, but just chill out. because if you just keep triggering them consistently, it's just their little small interruption in their day that makes them remember you. That literally makes them remember that you exist, because in the midst of everybody's own lives, they're not thinking in the middle of a Tuesday at 3:00, man, I haven't seen Tiff's post come through today. And here you are thinking, I got to post, I got to post, I got to post. Nobody's sitting there waiting on their phone for your post.
Yeah.
I know we would love to think that they are, but they're not. And so, like, just remember that it's just about doing things authentically from your heart, a love exchange literally in the world. You're giving and receiving all the time. You're putting value out, and you're open and ready to respond to the things that come in. And in the meantime, just by you doing that, people find their way to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of doing business consistently and triggering people in different ways and consistent methods, is because it interrupts their daily pattern and just keeps reminding you that you exist and you do this thing. That's what it's meant for.
Yeah. And most people know my feelings on social media and how I'm of the mindset that slow, authentic growth will always trump a viral video. Yep. Because you're getting better quality of people that are following you. They're really interested in your thing. You're not just collecting a bunch of bots or, random people that like one video. There's
true
quality over quantity. And I think that takes the pressure off to feel like you have to play the social media game to match the algorithm on this particular day, because like it changes daily, people. Yeah. Like the algorithm, they're constantly changing. And at the end of the day, social media, we don't own that platform. So at any time they could say, well, they don't like you, and you could be done. And so like, I'm a big advocate of not putting too much stock in like, so this is to the people, some people enjoy it. Like I have clients who love to post, great. Yeah. But if you're feeling as an entrepreneur, like, this is not my jam, I don't like to do this, then it can be something you say no to or minimize if it's not bringing you the dopamine rush to build your business in that way. I only recently started really being consistent, and I hired it out. So that's an option. Yeah, we both hired it.
Yeah, we did. Well, and being really clear too is like, what's a lifeline in your business and what's a tool? And you got to be very, very clear about what those are. And I think for most people, that's some of that inner work that you need to do. Like, people love you for who you are, not because of the post, but it's more about what you put in the post that matter most. But using tools is very different than relying on them as a lifeline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and you and I talked about that when I was having this realization of, like, sometimes I would do posts and it's like, well, yeah, this was a really, like, I mean, I was talking about, here's the deal. Maybe, do you know if you want to stay or go in your marriage? Well, I'm not going to expect people to comment on that. Yeah. Like, I don't have people who are commenting like, I'm ready to leave, in fear that all their friends and family are going to see it. So, like, for me, in my topic of what I'm talking about, it's very vulnerable, but it's very honest. But I sure as heck cannot rely on likes and comments for validation if they've read my message.
Yeah.
So,
because even though it resonates and they're like, yeah, that's me, like you said, they might not, because they don't want someone to see that they liked your post with the but that didn't stop you, like you were like, you recognize that. And then you're like, but this is important, and people need to start talking about this and being open about this so that they can heal and start asking the question themselves. And eventually they'll reach out, or eventually they'll at least talk to somebody. But just to know that it's normal, like to be having these questions, and there isn't shame about it. Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
Well, I want to wrap up our time together. Is there anything else as far as like habits, or just rewiring our brain, or making it easier to kind of get shit done at the end of the day? You want to share?
I think just winding it back to everything that we talked about, just knowing that that it's okay if you don't have the motivation to do something right now. Focus on what you do have. Just don't, it's more important that you use what you're naturally motivated to do right now than trying to force something that, honestly, sometimes when you force things, it takes twice the amount of time and energy to do it, and you're not even excited to do it in the first place, or maybe not even excited to do quality work in the first place. So if there's a way around it, or if this is where you scale or you hire somebody out or whatever the case is, just know that. And it doesn't mean that you won't, that you'll never be motivated to do it, but maybe it's just not the time right now. And then ability is both motivation and ability, but more so ability is ways that you can change those things. That's in your schedule. That's in your, freeing up time. That's your environment. Like, you can focus a little bit more on, do you have the ability to do something, and you can create that a lot of ways. So knowing that, kind of platforming your environment a little bit more is helpful to create some of these things.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is what we talked about, is when you're building a habit, the dopamine rush needs to be yours and yours only, not reliant on what anybody else says, does, responds, purchases. Nobody else. It's just your own celebration for the things and the behaviors that are moving you towards your goal.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sara. I so appreciate you taking your time to just hop on here with me and talk all about habits, and for this community to get to know you a little bit better. You're one of my favorite people, so I'm just grateful that you're in here. Okay, great. Well, if anybody has any questions for myself or for Sara, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm in the Well Connected Facebook group. You can message me in there or tag me, and hope everybody has a great rest of your day.